and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has Council had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes from August 3rd? If so, how do you wish to proceed?
I was not here, so I cannot.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from August 3rd as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Any changes to this evening's agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for approval of the set agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Guests in open forum. If you'll go ahead and state your name and your address, and we do allow up to 3 minutes for your comments.
Is this thing working?
And you can move it to a few.
Okay. My name is Hayden Oliver. I live at 318 West 6th Street in Monticello, Minnesota. I'm here today to represent my family's businesses, Good Spirits and Smoke. I would like to thank Mayor Bertram and the City Council members and the citizens of Becker for allowing me to speak. Last Friday, the 5 of you and the City Administrator, Gary LaRue, were sent an email from my mother, Julie Hollenbeck. In it, she addressed several things, including concerns that I would like to emphasize that as a family business owners, we could likely share in many of the concerns you have regarding the Delta 9 and the THC moratorium you're talking about. We want to prevent the sale of these products to individuals under 21. We currently have 2 businesses that require the same attention. We believe that these products should not be sold in anywhere near schools or daycares. We want to know that the products are safe and meet the standards set by the law. For nearly the past 2 years, we have been selling hemp-derived CBD and Delta products. This is not new to us. The new law has significantly lowered the amount of Delta in the current edibles. We would like to see it sold in adults-only establishments as to keep the accessibility away from persons under 21. Though we do not make any claims to either its effectiveness nor any medical claims, we have many customers that have reported that they receive pain relief, help with sleep, help with anxiety, PTSD relief, preventing relapses in their addiction, and they help with seizures. And many more too numerous to name. We think that it is also important to note that we have many customers that have prescriptions for medical marijuana, and yet they still come back to us to buy their product because of the high cost of the prescriptions and that it is not covered by their insurance. In the 1920s, we all know how that they had a prohibition on alcohol. As we can see from history, that was a failure in many ways. It increased crime. It made illegal production in the sale of alcohol. There was a loss of tax revenue for the state, and there was poisonous alcohol, bathtub gin. This resulted in things like blindness, paralysis, and recorded 50,000 deaths. As a family and as a business, we would like to see that something similar does not happen again. With drugs such as fentanyl and heroin on a rise, we would hate to see a person get some of these drugs laced in it. Unfortunately, people that sell drugs on the street do not care who they sell them to, what they are selling them, and sadly, how young a person is. We have been an adults-only business for 8 years here in Becker. As a business, we are not opposed to local licensing or regulation and believe that it should only be sold in an adults-only store. We have always strived to stay current with the laws that govern our stores and our products. We were selling Delta products for nearly the past 2 years, and once we heard that a law was going to change our business, we stopped selling the product that we were no longer going to be able to sell. And we immediately made a very large purchase order, an equipment order, in order to accommodate the new law. And that was made effective July 1st, 2022. With a moratorium placed on our business at this time, It could put us in such debt that we may not be able to afford to stay open and would have to unfortunately close. That would also mean that we would close both of our businesses here in town. As an example of what we would like to see happen going forward, there's a similar store towers in the Mall of America. Bloomington is not stopping their sales while they create a license. Other cities have grandfathered in existing stores to continue to operate as well. We'd appreciate the same consideration for both of our businesses as well as for our keeping the product available for our customers. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else for open forum? Seeing no one, we'll move into committee reports. The Personnel Committee met and we discussed the job descriptions and the non-DOT drug testing policy that's actually in our packet for this evening. How about EDA?
EDA, we met on August 8th. We had a monthly market update for the housing in the area here. Inventory going up a little bit is probably not a surprise to anybody. They gave some more specific numbers, but that was kind of the synopsis of that. We had a couple other just updates on different projects that we've talked about as council, but just kind of updating the EDA on the 10-acre development, and then describing the lot coverage language that we talked about at the previous meeting. And just the solar overlay and then the Sherco master planning were updates as well.
All right. Public Works Committee, we met last week. We discussed all the street project updates, such as like Bank Street and Rolling Ridge. Bank Street should be finished, depending upon the weather, by Friday. And then we also talked about the south side at the BCC Outdoor Sport Courts off of Bradley. I believe that's on this evening's agenda, a part of that improvement. And then we discussed the compost site, the redesign of the piles and the upgrades that took place to leveling the surface out, and as well as the camera updates. So all good stuff there. Fire Board met last night and we discussed the budget follow-up from July. And then we also discussed the historic land right behind the township that we've all discussed as well. And we also have taken note that we're going to keep up on the bylaw and the contract documentation that we talked about at our joint entity meeting. We will kind of start keeping that and moving that forward piece by piece. And I believe September will be our next meeting. That will have something updated for you. Any other committee meetings? Park and Rec did not meet, so.
Well, Rick touched on the solar overlay, which we met here at City Hall. Okay. And both the city and the township people that were there agreed on the same locations, which I think was the update that Rick was talking about.
Good.
I guess the facilities group, we did meet last Thursday as well here. So we met with Wold. They came in, did their initial presentation, and gave us kind of timelines. They are going to be, even though there's a lot of the details will be hashed out within that group, there is going to be at least one presentation, probably at a workshop or a executive session for full council to be able to see and weigh in earlier in the process. So timeline was looking right, and by end of the year to have a deliverable. So that was pretty quick turnaround. So.
Okay. All right, board, committee, and consultant reports. Sidewalk and fence installation at Community Park. Mr. Kua.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In front of you this evening, we have a RCA and resolution for sidewalk and fence installation at our newly branded community park, which is in the green space adjacent to the Becker Community Center. So as part of our phased approach, we are looking to install some fencing along the border of the splash pad to kind of protect from traffic, from our youth running around and enjoying the facility there, as well as some connectivity concrete path work from the parking lot to get our guests to the splash pad and eventually to other amenities within that community park. So this is something that we've been working on and had included in the 2022 CIP capital improvement project for Community Park. So we had taken a quote from Cornerstone Concrete on the installation of the concrete slab. They were the ones that were a really good partner and did the concrete work for the pickleball courts and the basketball courts. And we're looking at doing a very similar fence installation that you would see throughout our community, following the same kind of brand standards that you'd see at Pebble Creek and various park properties. And that work would be done by the Public Works team. And there's a small allocation of $1,500 for some irrigation modifications by the Pebble Creek staff and Public Works to get that job done. So again, it's part of the phased approach to kind of protect the safety standards around the splash pad, as well as ADA access and pathwork connectivity to the various amenities that are popping up in that area. So this concept was discussed with Parks and Rec Commission, as well as the staff, and we support this plan as proposed. We did budget $40,000 for the capital improvement project for this year, and this particular plan is not to exceed $23,635. So there would be some remaining for subsequent pathways once those areas are identified in a subsequent phase. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. If not, looking for a motion and second, approving Resolution 2261, approving the Community Park Walk and Fencing Installation Project for a price not to exceed $23,635. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
What kind of fencing, you said, is it the wooden ones that are, okay.
Yep, the stained wood.
The bid just stated chain linked fence post, so I wanted to clarify.
Oh, yep. Yeah, it is the 23,635 is for the wooden fence that you've seen throughout our property with that dark reddish stain.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2261 for the Community Park Walk-in Fencing Project, not to exceed $23,635.
I'll second that.
Motion from Robin, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Carl E. Johnson, shade structure. Mr. Knutson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last year, we put in, actually, a year and a half ago, we put in new equipment over at Carl E. Johnson. And with that new equipment in the play area, we've seen a major increase in traffic over there. So the next step, as you see the theme in our parks, we're trying to enhance and grow and not do it all at once. So the next step that we looked at doing was adding some shade over there and some picnic tables. So the unique option with this one is we do have some parkland dedication that was just brought into the community with the Foss Estates on Riley Avenue, just down the street from the park. And on the south side on Bank Street with that lot split and that development coming in, we did get parkland dedication. So we would propose to use those funds for this shade structure and picnic tables. We did get a couple of different bids from Minnesota, Wisconsin Playground and Weber Recreation quote. So the bid that we're looking to go after is from the Minnesota, Wisconsin Playground. And the staff is asking to utilize the full amount of the parkland dedication, which is $9,833.94. It'll cover all of the cost of the play or the shade structure. The balance would go towards two picnic tables, and we're looking to pour the concrete in-house. And if there's costs that exceed the $98,33.94, it'll come out of the park's operational budget, pending your approval. So with that, I would look for a motion on approval of Resolution 2259, but can answer any other questions that you might have.
What is your definition of pouring concrete in-house?
Staff would look to do that concrete. So we just pay for the
Qualified
materials.
staff to do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, we poured several slabs. Actually, we poured the slabs over at the BAC that our storage sheds are set on. So it just comes down to timing, what our staff has time to do or what a
But
contractor
what I'm
has time to
getting
do.
at is what's the fit and finish look like?
It's a broom finish. Floated and broomed. We can go out and show you the staff. I wouldn't have the staff do it if they're not capable of doing it,
Okay,
so,
that's all I was asking.
yep.
We have concrete versus just regular turf, like grass. Is there a reason for the concrete?
Because the turf turns to, with use of the picnic tables, turf turns to dirt.
I suppose like maintenance wise too, just
And getting
mowing.
around it. So typically what we've done in most of our parks, at City Park, you'll see that as well. We pour a slab around there, put the table on top of it. So you're trimming around the pad, and it just makes for longevity. It's a little bit of initial cost, but long-term, it's a better product, I believe, and it wears well.
A lot less maintenance.
I would imagine you'd still have to pour concrete anyway for the footings. If you were doing to just do that, you'd still have concrete work anyway, just be less.
Yep.
Is the shade, is that gonna, would those come down in the winter then?
Yep. Typically, we'll pull the canopy down. It's pretty easy to get it off. It just lengthens the life of them. So this is a structure that we're excited to get in place because we're looking at an opportunity to throw some shade over by the splash pad as well, to give some, the trees provide a little bit, but you'll see the parents are huddled and kind of pushing each other out of the way of the shade of the pine trees. So next year, we would look, if this works out well and it performs how we think it would, we would likely bring something back next year to do something like this, one or two of these, and spot those over in that area as well, to keep the splash pad sunny, but to give the parents some relief, so.
Okay, I'll, just unless there are any other questions, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2259.
Second?
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll move into change order number 1 for the 2022 street improvement projects. Mr. Knutson.
Good evening again. Change order, I apologize, I don't like that, to use that term. On our 2022 street projects, we did have an alternate A portion of the project, which is additional parking at the community center, the backside entrance. I did not clearly state this with our engineers on what we were looking to do. I wanted to reclaim that entrance right now and get us to the edge of the curve. If that 10 acres develops, that's where they would take onto the street and add on to it. The current entryway is it's okay. It's degrading a little bit, but the thought was we're adding a valley curb where the existing curb is, and we're adding the 16 parking stalls. Doing that work, I'd like to reclaim that street, and that was the intent of the bid originally, so we can get through from Bradley up to the curve. So if construction occurs next year on the 10-acre parcel, if that goes through, and we would have to block it off for construction purposes, we could still have access to that new parking, which would get you to the splash pad or the pickleball courts, and it would just kind of alleviate a little bit of interference. So again, the intention was to have that included in the original alternate, and I just missed it with engineering and didn't put it on there. So we did reach out to Minnesota Paving on the reclaiming side of it, and we did get verification that we looked through the unit pricing is the same as it would have been if it was included in the original alternate. So we do have funds available in our CIP to cover this. The addition that we're looking at is $45,700.02. I think it's a good use to improve that street this year with this construction cycle, so next year we can use those parking slots. And if construction occurs on the north side, we can run interference and block that off and keep people safe with that southbound access.
So if that wasn't in the, what was in the alternate then? If that
The alternate was cutting out the curb, adding the parking stalls that go into the,
not reclaiming
not reclaiming the full street. It just saw cuts about 18 inches of the street.
that, when that is redone, it's gonna be reclaimed anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought you had that all in there.
I did too. Randy and I were just not on the same page, so it happened. Like I said, I'll take the responsibility for that I didn't communicate that well, and I didn't realize it till after we actually did the pre-con meeting. Even during bid opening, I didn't see that it wasn't in there. Like I said, my intention was to reclaim that and do it all at once. I think it makes a better project, it's a cleaner street,
I'm kinda
and it's
thinking
done.
back to when we did the bid award, and we're talking about, you actually did not say reclaim that.
Yeah.
So, okay. I don't like change orders either.
No, I don't, and this one, like I said, I thought it was there, and it's on me that I didn't catch it, so apologize for that.
So the positioning of this, if the project next door were to go through, the positioning of this, we won't have to move these in a year if for the width of that would, that street or potential street would be.
The purpose, we looked at that, Rick, and so the current street is 24 feet wide. And the addition is proposed to go to, I think it's either 32 or 34 feet wide. We don't want to change this. We want to keep it neck down because we feel it's going to slow traffic down coming through there. Typically, narrower streets, it keeps people moving a little bit slower. So that's our purpose. So we're not going to move any curbs. We wouldn't propose to move any curbs. And so doing this now, we're not putting money down that we're going to tear up a year from now. And we would saw a cut where they would just tie into the cold joint when they do their curb and add into that street.
Yeah, it makes sense to do it. Like I said, I thought you already had that.
I did. Oversight on my part, so that's on me.
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 1 for the 2022 street improvement project.
I'll second that.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thanks. Security camera equipment upgrade at the compost site. Mr. Euchre.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I got a resolution in front of you to upgrade the security cameras and the equipment out there for that. We currently, the security cameras out there now don't support it very well. We're not able to see people that are illegally dumping or anything. So we want to upgrade the cameras so that we can see it. We got a bid from Marco to keep it uniform with the rest of the city on the Milestone system so that everybody can see it at the same time. The total cost would be $11,111.05. We did bring it up to the Public Works Committee and they recommended bring it to approval. We did bring it to the chief and he verified that it's what the cameras would work out there. They're appropriate for catching people if they're doing anything illegal out there. And we talked to the finance director. There's 2 sources of funding. We would go to the yard waste score funding from the county. And then there is some money in the revolving capital at administrative CIP account. And we would use that also, what remaining. So I'm looking for a motion and a second on resolution 2260, approving the security cameras and supporting equipment at the Becker Yard waste site.
Okay, with these cameras, I've been out there and dumped stuff and I've seen stuff that is not supposed to be out there. Will these cameras pick up the people that are doing that?
It's gonna help us. Right now, if someone dumps something out there, they're outdated, so we can't watch the cameras
I'm
very
talking
well.
about the new ones.
But the new ones are, yes, they'll be with the Milestone, so you can pick a certain time and backtrack it and much easier to find stuff.
But you'll get a clear picture of.
Yes, you will be able to, there'll be 4 cameras. One will be at the entrance where you can see what they have, their license plate, and then we'll have 2 on the other corners and 1 also facing the whole area, so it'll be covered much better than what it is right now.
Yeah, cause like I said, I've seen stuff out there that isn't supposed to be there. And that just makes more work for you.
And just a note, I did, this is probably 2 months ago or so, met with Rob and Mark about this as well. So something that we had just talked about, more on the technology side, but about the importance of staying with the same vendor as opposed, because you might look and say, well, we could go out and get these other ones a little cheaper, but it'd be a different vendor, and it's just not something you typically want to do, is have different vendors like that. This one will tie into our other systems, so we worked through that. Talked about all the items, all the technology items that we got coming up here tonight, but for this one, so.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2260 for the security cameras and supporting equipment at the yard waste site.
I will second that.
Motion from Robin, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thanks. Backup server upgrades. Mr. Ebensteiner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the RC in front of you, the first one I have here, the backup server upgrades. Working with our new information systems manager, Rob, talked about data retention at the city and just how we currently work through that process. So Data retention and cybersecurity are, of paramount and have become increasingly important as some of the risks that are out there. To the point where even when we did our insurance renewal, the league's starting to break out cybersecurity as a separate line item because it is so significant. So just a little bit of our background, our current backup process. We do have a free version of the Veeam software. We have a local backup server, and then we have a removable encrypted hard drive that's removed safely each evening, brought off site, brought back the next day. In addition, just to lay the groundwork, we don't have any backup for our Office 365 data. We have transitioned more into the cloud, so a lot of our day-to-day files, as opposed to living on our on-premise server, do live in the cloud through SharePoint, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams. So we don't necessarily back those up. There are processes that Microsoft has to back those up. So within the RCA, we did list some of the drawbacks just to kind of lay some of the part that we were really trying to solve. Really, Rob is the IT services manager. He's responsible for those daily backups. So if Rob's on vacation, we don't necessarily kind of transition those tasks. So we would have a period of time that may not be backed up. If we were, we have the drive in and we evacuate, there's a fire on premise. We're not going to have Rob run in and grab the drive and run back out. That wouldn't be the best case scenario. Currently, we only have 7 days of retention on site. With the free version, we really miss a lot of the features where we could kind of control some of the settings and things. And then we could have some accidental deletion of files. And then if we did have some hardware fail, we would be down for extended period of time. So really, that's really the groundwork of what we're trying to solve. Like, what is a best practice in this scenario, since it is such an important piece of city operations? So the proposed solution, which is in front of you tonight, is a Unitrends appliance with a cloud subscription and the Office 365 backup. So this would eliminate that daily process of bringing it back and forth. Really would have unchangeable backups. We'd have a greater history, 90 days. Fast recovery, backups of our Office 365 data. And then we are looking at more of a public portal on our permit side that would utilize our server and through the Laserfish software. So by the upgrades that we propose here, it would allow us to expand on some of those items that we are looking to incorporate over the next couple of years, where a resident or a builder could go in and go right into the system and put in information into a permit, and we kind of have more of a workflow to take a lot of those day-to-day administrative tasks off of staff's table. So as Rick had mentioned, we did discuss with him, as well as briefly at Budget and Finance. So on the budgetary fiscal impact, we did have some carryover funds in the administrative CIP. For 2021, we had, I think, $35,000 initially set aside for IT upgrades, camera upgrades. I think we only spent $3,000 of that, so we had approximately $32,000 remaining. So we would propose using those funds, $19,680 for the initial install, which would cover us for the first 3 years of subscription, and then from there, after that, it would range between $5,000 to $6,000 per year, which we would incorporate into the operations budget from there. So with that, I can answer any questions, or we look for a motion in a second to approve staff to move forward with the proposed upgrades.
Just had a couple comments. So in as Mark had said, we when we met about we talked about multiple things we're talking about here. One of the things we talked about was the timing, whether to do it now or whether to do it next year. In the case of our biggest threat as a city, and this is no secret, I'm not spilling the beans on anything, our biggest threat is probably ransomware. And so the single biggest thing that you can do to prevent, well, there's a couple things, but one of the biggest things you can do to make sure that ransomware doesn't sink your ship, so to speak, is to have great backups. And those are the difference when you see organizations that come back in a day or two versus the ones that are down for weeks or longer. It usually comes down to how good are their backups. And even the 7 days to the 90 days. So I know when we were talking about this, we had floated, well, maybe we, put this under the next year's CIP. This was the single biggest thing, for me, this was the single biggest thing I wanted to see us do as quick as possible. And that's why it's, I think it's why it's here tonight. So, like I said, we, as you said, we do have backups, in place. It's not like we were flying with none, but this is, this is important. That 7 days to 90 days is big as well, because sometimes a lot of times you'll see the threat actors will be in your system for a little while, and it could be longer than 7 days. And so you have to go back. Usually you want to, go back to the point where they were not in your system, otherwise everything's considered tainted at that point. So, that's where the 7 to 90 days really comes into importance. And so, again, this is the single biggest thing I think we can do from a risk standpoint to help alleviate that. So I'm fully in favor of this. And, well, with that then. At the prompting, I will make a motion then to approve that staff move forward with the proposed backup server upgrades.
I'll second that.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you, Mark. How about Milestone camera system upgrades?
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So definitely piggybacks right from Mr. Euchre's presentation. He had referenced it. But we are looking at making some upgrades to our Milestone camera system. So currently we do have 6 individually managed Milestone camera systems within the city at different locations. What this would do is it would, also none of them are running the current versions of Milestone software. So they were initially installed and implemented, just have not been upgraded to the latest and greatest versions, which does get into some of those security issues as well when you're not getting the new security patches and just making sure that all the software is up to date. So the goals would be to, allow maintenance on those security side, on the updates. The standardization would also make it easy to add cameras in the future. We do have a couple locations where we're also looking at adding a few cameras, including the Compost site out there. And then also the centralization. So currently our information systems manager, not that it's the biggest piece, but when he's setting up user IDs, he has to set them up at each of those different locations. This will allow it to be in-house. It would live at City Hall. Then when he sets up a new user, they would get their user ID. They could pull it up on their device and they could see all those different locations through that one user login, and they wouldn't have to access different systems throughout the city. So with the Compost site edition, we would just have one site that would be non-Milestone, and as that system goes end of life, we would also look at transitioning that to Milestone as well to bring it all under one house as well. So City Hall would really be that hub. The video and surveillance, like the data would still live at each of those locations. It wouldn't be streamed necessarily because that gets into some security risks as well. So it would live there, but really the maintenance and all the updates would run through that centrally managed. So we did discuss budget and finance and with Councilmember Hendrickson. So here we did, after our initial discussion, the initial quote was a little bit higher. They had quoted us for a number of hours for each separate location. Rob had gone back to them and really focused on, okay, what can you do to get me started? And then he can kind of run with some of those upgrades at those other locations. So the initial install, $9,582.32. That would include all the upgrading of the software and 2 years of maintenance. And that maintenance is really important just to keep everything up to date. And then after 2 years, it would be right around $33 per camera for the 56 cameras that we currently have. And then annual maintenance of approximately $2,000 would be absorbed in the operations. So once again, we'd utilize some of that administrative CIP rollover from prior year that was not spent. And with that, I can answer any questions, or we look for a motion to have staff move forward with the proposed Milestone camera system upgrades.
So they don't update automatically? And why is that?
It's a license type of thing, you would pay for it.
Because, I mean, a lot of most of our electronic stuff upgrades, you know, as time goes on.
Yep, and I think Rick's correct. If it was purchased on the front, so if you purchased that maintenance agreement on the front end and then you had all those updates along the way, you know, we had installed at different times and some of those things fell off. So we didn't really have, you know, even with Rob, you know, having an information systems manager on staff, now we've kind of looked at these and how, you know, how can we streamline these? How can we bring them under one umbrella so we're not operating, you know, multiple camera systems in different areas? And it's great for staff too. So, you know, when Mr. Euchre and his staff are looking at reviewing the cameras, they're not logging in the, you know, 5 different systems to find the video that they need. You know, we're gonna have one system that we can access, scroll through and find the data that's necessary. So staff time should help too.
To answer your question a little more, I guess there's different business models. So you think of your Microsoft Windows, you buy it once, you know, they give you your Windows updates all the time, that just comes as part of it. Oftentimes you'll see with products like this, they have security staff that are, you know, doing security updates, things like that, and it's kind of their way to recoup the cost to pay for those ongoing security professionals to do that. So they're just different business models, but it's a fairly common.
Okay. I'll accept that.
Make a motion to approve staff to move forward with the proposed Milestone camera system upgrades.
I'll second that.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second quarter financials, Mr. Evansteiner.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll keep this quick and summarized. You'll definitely see I have attached the financial summary for year-to-date, or at least through June 30th, so that looks similar. I try to take a little bit different approach. A lot of times I'll have narrative in here. I tried to put together some charts that would tell a little bit of the story, and then I'll just hit on a couple of the highlights. But on that first area there, you know, that chart really focuses on a comparison. So it has the 2021 year-to-date actuals, the 2022 year-to-date actuals through June 30th, and then the 2022 budget. And then I included some percentages just to give us. So a lot of the data that's in that attached summary, but more in a chart form. So, you know, looking at the chart, you know, general fund expenditures about 45% of the way through the budget. So much in line with prior years. You know, we're June 30th, we're 50% through. So we're trending below that 50%. And then just a couple of items to highlight. You know, really, on the golf side, you know, they're at 57%. You know, as you're all aware, you know, golf was more seasonal, so they're going to ramp up and have more of those expenditures, you know, mid-year. So it's reasonable that they're a little bit ahead of the curve on that side. And then you'll see some of the others that, you know, 30% for water, 47% for domestic sewer, and then 51% for industrial sewer. So definitely in line with prior year and expectations. But gives you a little bit of a graphical format to show where we're at between budget and actuals through mid-year. So then the next chart I took a look at really on more of the fee-based funds, you know, the community center, the golf course, the water fund, and then the sewer fund. So there, really looked at operating expenditures. I broke out depreciation and then revenues. So there are just a couple things to highlight, you know, starting with the community center. You know, they're at 107% of revenues. Expenditures are, you know, slightly more than revenues. You know, there we do have a levy that does support part of operations, so it's reasonable. We got a portion of the levy, you know, prior to June 30th, but we did get another portion in July, the second 30% of the first half. You know, we also had some of the changes in the comp plan, and then just with some of those utility rates that have increased. So it makes sense that, you know, we're trending a little faster, but on the same side, you know, revenues are continuing to recover as memberships, you know, uptick, which we've discussed as well. On the golf course side, continues to perform well. Expenditures at 93% of current revenues. Their food and beverage sales continue to outperform expectations. And then the water and domestic sewer fund, they're currently operating expenditures, and a large portion of depreciation are funded through revenues. There you can see the orange is the operating expenditures, depreciation, which is more of a non-cash expenditure. So really the goal is that your rates you set are, at least supporting operations. So your rates should at minimum cover your operating expenditures, and then depending on how much of depreciation they cover, that'll flow into your capital improvement plan. So we also have that robust capital improvement plan that we're keeping an eye on. We don't necessarily have to fund depreciation at 100%, but we are in line with what our goals are there. And then on the industrial sewer side, their expenditures are a little bit higher than revenues, but that is primarily focused on user fees through LPI. We do have established rates, but depending on activity, it does have some different trends. So staff will continue to keep an eye on those rates and where expenditures are at, and also needs of the system as we continue forward with that. But otherwise, the only other item just to mention that we have touched on, especially at the budget and finance meetings, which we had discussed all this data as well, but definitely the increasing utility rates, with electric and gas and fuel charges, that's really driving the bus on the expenditure side. So with that, I can answer any questions or no action at this time on this item. Just wanted to bring it as an update.
The only question I have is the industrial waste side. There's a bond that we have that they pay. Is that part of this calculation?
I think it's not included in the operating.
Okay.
No, it wouldn't be, because it's a full accrual, so it'd be applied directly to the payable. Yep.
Oh, okay, so it's just up higher than what the revenue is.
Yep, because we still have.
Can it catch up by year end or not?
It could. It definitely fluctuates based on activity, based on what they're doing out there and what they're hauling and things. And we still have our consistent costs. We have payroll that's coded out there. So annually we need to look at those rates and what we're charging. And there may be a point where we do need to make some adjustments, and we'll work closely with LPI on what those adjustments need to be. But they've been great to work with. Our debt debt service payments are always paid, and great communication on that side, so.
Okay.
Yep, good question. All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks. Administrator and staff report, annexation of city-owned property. Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. For you tonight, we have a resolution for annexation. As a reminder, we have an orderly annexation agreement with Becker Township. That's been in place for some time. It's re-upped as long as there's agreement every 10 years, and I think 2017 was the last time it was done. So last night, the Beckertown Board did review this resolution. So the way that these work under the orderly annexation is a joint resolution between both the Beckertown Board and the City Council. And these then would go to, as long as they're approved, they would go to the Office of Administrative Hearings for the final approval and issuance of an annexation. The two properties that we're looking at are the ones with the well house. And if you look in the last page, it's the well house 1 and B, and then A is the 80 acres north of where the new school bus garage will go. Now, really the only main reason for these, there's no developments occurring on these or anything. There's just to bring city properties into the city boundaries. And again, Becker Township reviewed this, and they did vote to approve the resolution. We were made aware today, which two of these we didn't know about, but north of part of City Park is technically the dog park area is within the township, which we didn't know about till today, and also the compost site. So we did talk with the township about that, so those will come later as well. So those are the two outliers that we'll bring back and include to make everything that the city owns within the city boundaries. So if there are no questions, we're seeking for a motion in a second approving Resolution 2262. A joint resolution, you don't have to repeat the whole thing, but a joint resolution between the township and the city for annexation of those properties. Any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2622, or 2262.
A second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moratorium of THC Products. Mr. LaRue.
Mayor Bertram and city council members, the city attorney prepared an ordinance establishing a moratorium on the sale of THC products following the enactment of the law after the last legislative session. The legislation did not contain very much guidance regarding the sale of the product, nor did it prohibit cities from regulating and enacting ordinances to regulate the sale. And the city does not presently have any regulations regarding THC products. The proposed moratorium would be up to a period of 1 year, but it could be less. Since the law became effective, a number of Minnesota cities have already approved moratorium and others are considering adopt one. I will note that other cities have considered a moratorium and not adopted, some deciding to immediately proceed with developing an ordinance regulating the sales. There are some considerations for the council to consider if you choose not to adopt a moratorium first. It's likely the legislature will pick this up again during the next session. And if the city adopts an ordinance in between and the state ends up being more restrictive, the city would have to come back, amend its own ordinance, which could disrupt sellers from restrictions that they've been used to. The other thing is, there are other regulations that are not addressed if there's not an ordinance in place, and that's, which businesses can sell these products, the location of the products within the establishment. Transient merchants or pop-up businesses come to town and sell, distance from schools and other retailers, home delivery, background checks, etc. Those would not be addressed without an ordinance in place. Council received an email from the owner of 2 local businesses that currently sell hemp-derived products, listing the concerns with the moratorium. You heard additional ones here tonight from them. And the council can pass the ordinance as presented or as it amends tonight. It can table and request additional information before passing the ordinance, or the council can decline to adopt the ordinance and provide staff alternative direction.
Maybe as a point of clarification, so in your, you had an email response. So the moratorium is only in relation to products that were made legal with the July 1st
That is
law.
what,
So anything that was legal previously to July 1st would still be legal, would not be covered under this moratorium.
anything that was being sold prior to the law, the city attorney said would continue to be allowed for sale.
Okay.
If that needs to be clarified, I can do that, but that's what they told me.
Why can't we deal with this like we would cigarettes or liquor?
You can.
Where that has to be a certain distance from schools, it can't be, it's gotta be 21 and all that garbage.
Nothing would prevent the council from,
Because the state's gonna come back with something.
they are, they certainly
And
are.
if we just followed our cigarette and liquor guidelines that we have, when the state comes back with, they're gonna do something. We could just adopt the state's.
If it's more restrictive, otherwise if
Right,
it's less
yeah.
restrictive, ours can stay in
Right.
place. There's nothing preventing that.
Does the police chief have anything to say about this? Just out of curiosity?
The problem that's come up is that the legislature.
Chief, to the podium.
Really what happened here is the legislature adopted this without a little fanfare or comment from really anybody else.
Right.
Therefore, that's how we've kind of gotten into this. And so when you hear of the moratoriums, that's really what's happening. We need more time to kind of look at these things and see what the impact is going to be to our communities. So that's kind of, I guess, what I've seen happening here. You're right, there's been a fair amount of talk that this will be coming up again. To what degree, I don't know, but it's become very political, I do know that. Time will tell, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Well, my concern is that we end up doing the heavy lifting for the state. A higher government authority approved this, and then it left us to deal with it, and that's not the correct way to go, in my opinion.
As is often the case,
Yeah.
yeah. I would agree.
So I would, rather than doing a moratorium, I would rather just make sure that it's 21 and not sold to anywhere near schools and stuff like that.
How long does it take to develop an ordinance?
Could do a month. Understanding that we will probably not have all of the contingencies. That's the reason for moratorium too. It slows things down. You say, okay, what do we really have here? What are there gonna be the emergent issues? If we go to, put an ordinance in a month, it is likely we would be back probably a couple of months later. It's, oh yeah, we forgot about this.
That's fine.
And so, and that's fine too, but understand that impacts the sellers who may be relying on that first ordinance, and now you're gonna change it again. So the moratorium would put you at an endpoint where you say, okay, we've studied this enough, here's the issues.
Well, the thing is there's other issues too. You talked about, vendors coming in. If they require a license, they can't come in.
Right now, we don't require a license.
No, but we require a license for cigarettes and alcohol. Why couldn't we require a license for this?
We could.
And I'm not suggesting that to make a profit or anything like that. I'm just, as a way of preventing what you said is a possibility of somebody coming in and setting up shop right next door or something like that. I got a problem with stopping something that the state has approved. I really do.
I agree. I struggle with somebody who's operating legally and.
And now we tell them they can't.
Yep.
I would rather take a short amount of time and other than the fact that there's certain people that just plain don't like anything to do with drugs, and I understand that. But that really isn't our decision anymore. It's already been decided for us, in my opinion. I would rather take whatever time we need to come up with a basic ordinance to just protect the young people, so to speak, for the time being, and wait for the state to come up with their guidelines.
Are these products currently only being sold in the one business in town here?
Two, I thought.
Two.
Two?
Yep.
They're not being sold at Super America or anything like that?
No.
I would agree with the sentiment about, that we would, not take the year. That we don't look at this and go, oh, we got a year, till August 10th or whatever next year, and then we, do that. We've done it before where, have we ever been through a chapter 11 ordinance? I mean,
Yeah, we do it
every other month, we're doing something for that. So I mean, it's not, we've done the driveway ones multiple times where we've hit 95% of it with a pass, and then we come back and it's like, oh, we either needed some clarification or we needed some, we didn't think of this scenario or whatever. I mean, it happens. So I guess for that reason, I wouldn't want to wait the year under the tense that, we're gonna, it may come back for change. I mean, it may. I think if we go for that, that's okay. I could go, I understand the reason for, why you would say a moratorium, because it does, like what you're talking about there, where you say, I mean, my first thought is, it's just like liquor. I mean, you say, okay, liquor can't, you can't put it across the street from an elementary school, you can't put it, there's certain restrictions, but none of those are in place today. And,
It wouldn't take that long to.
it would not, and that's, I guess, what we'd be comfortable with would be, I'm perfectly fine with, staff, getting to work on it right away and saying, okay, let's, if that's our, direction tonight is, let's do this, this fall. Let's put something together and let's take our best first pass at it. The league probably not gonna have very much, and we know the legislature is probably gonna come back and, as they usually mess it up, they probably will do that here too, and, and they're gonna probably do something to more refine it, and yeah, we will have to update it. Just know it's coming. So really, that's our,
Yeah, and if they do come up with something that's stricter than what we have to follow theirs anyway.
yep, and that's fine. So really then the question, if that's our direction, then our question is, do you want the moratorium in place while staff writes the, either way, we say, we would, if you were to say, okay, staff go forward and write this tonight, I mean, another option would be wait a year, but if you say, okay, staff go forward and write this tonight, what are the implications of having a moratorium versus not? And not so much with our, current businesses in town, but with new ones, I guess. We talked about the flyby vendor, I guess, what are the implications that we would have to consider with a moratorium versus without, while staff is writing this ordinance?
The risks would be greater the longer that time period is. So if your direction is, we want this back within 30 days, I think it's a relatively minor risk. I don't think you bother with the moratorium. And I think we would come back to the next meeting and say, hey, we're not gonna be able to do this in 30 days and here's why. Then maybe a short-term moratorium goes in place. Or if it doesn't look like it's a huge risk, then we just continue to, okay, end of September, let's have it then. And we can pass it then.
Yeah, because the one thing, is I think we should have a license requirement. It doesn't have to be a large fee, just a nominal fee, but I think that way we can prevent people.
Well, and it does make sense to have a very similar regulations, because if you limit it to stores that are already over 18 or over 21, you've taken the minors out of the equation in a lot of ways. So
Right.
you don't have to specify where in the store it can be, that kind of stuff, nor distance between sellers, because it's already regulated in a different way.
That way we wouldn't be interrupting their business. And by the way, that's not my reasoning. My reasoning is just, I don't like the idea of the state doing something and leaving us hanging. All of it's justifiable, your argument. I would rather go that route and then, like I say, require a license fee, and we can determine where they can go. And, the tobacco stores are a good place, to have it.
For this product, yeah.
You haven't said much?
No, I mean, you've asked most of my questions. It's the regulatory part that,
And like I say, the state's gonna come back and do something, and they're probably gonna, depends on what happens in the election, they could get really strict,
yeah. It's just that it can go anywhere at this moment, not just one.
No, we haven't seen that, but you're right.
Yeah,
Right.
Technically it could, yes.
Right.
technically.
I could start selling out of my house, couldn't I?
You talk about so many things.
Good inspection of your house.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
Business license. Now, there are some, so for example, if, let's say we did have a transient come in and set up on a vacant lot somewhere, they have permission, they still would have to demonstrate that they're complying with the minimal parts of the law, which you can't sell to anybody under 18. So we would have some authority to go in there and say, demonstrate to us, or what are your precautions? And I think we have the right, based on our police power, to say you're either done or you have to comply in this way.
But also, doesn't anybody that comes into town and does business, don't they have to get a permit from the city?
Peddlers, we get the
Peddlers
peddlers.
Dealers do. But it isn't, we can't exclude them because our ordinance
Correct.
doesn't limit them.
Okay,
It doesn't prevent
valid
them.
argument, I'll go along with that.
When Minnesota's health department comes in to double check like alcohol and smoking or cigarette places, would they include this in there?
If the city said
Compliance
as part,
checks?
a city, as its ordinance would do an annual compliance check?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wouldn't there be an annual, isn't there, I mean,
Again, it's
Right
whatever
now,
you
there
want it
isn't.
to be. There
county
is
doesn't.
nothing.
Not on this.
The county does the annual compliance checks,
Alcohol and tobacco.
just alcohol and tobacco,
Correct.
huh?
And we would be responsible in this case unless the county were to adopt its own THC-related ordinance.
Has the county said anything about
I've not
TH?
heard anything from them.
Nor around us. I mean, really.
Yeah, I would just like to come up with some basic ordinance just to, and keep it to, just to let
Starting
them go.
point, yeah.
Okay.
That's my feeling also.
Be okay with that, as long as we're doing it right away.
I would say if that's your direction, then I think the motion would be to table action on this moratorium. And it would just sit there. We'll come back as soon as we can, hopefully the first meeting in September. If there's a time where we have to take it off the table, then that motion is still, it's still out there. We wouldn't have to bring it back on a specific agenda.
So I will, if there's any other discussion?
Nope, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, so I will make a motion then to table this ordinance or discussion, so.
Moratorium ordinance on THC products.
Yep, I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, consent agenda. Mr. LaRude.
Mayor Bertram, city council members, items for approval on the consent agenda tonight include: number one, approving the amended hiring and termination reports for the Becker Community Center, Pebble Creek Golf Course, and Police Department. Number two, approving ordinance number 260, second series, requiring a driver's license to operate a golf cart with a permit. Number three, approving the senior planner job description and Gallagher job evaluation for that position, as well as the updated associate planner job description. Number four, approve the updated Public Works Administrative Assistant and Community Development Assistant, Administrative Assistant job descriptions. Number five, approve the updates to the non-DOT employee drug testing policy. Number six, Resolution 22-58, approving the Better Health Collective Bylaws and Agreements, which has been reviewed by the city attorney, and it is our healthcare provider.
Anybody have any questions on any of that?
Nope.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Payment of the bills.
I will make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Does council have anything else for the betterment of Becker? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned 6:02 PM.